The one game I never got to try back in the early 2000s was Mafia. I mean, I was too busy at this point playing Call of Duty, so I missed out on what a lot of people would call classics, Mafia being one of those games. One day while browsing through the Steam store and checking out some of the frequent deals I get, I stumbled upon the Mafia Trilogy Pack. That included the definitive edition of all 3 games for only $59.99. I couldn't pass that up. I mean, what, 3 games for the price of one AAA game in 2023? Well, that was months ago and I finally got around to playing it. This is my 100% review of Mafia Definitive Edition. As always, I'm going to be discussing my experience with the game and different topics including the story, combat and gameplay, and more. At the end, I'll be giving you my honest opinion if I believe this game is worth paying full price, waiting for a sale, or just overall ignoring it. There will be spoilers, so be wary, but sit back and grab a snack and let's talk about Mafia Definitive Edition. First off, the story. The game is told from the point of view of Tommy Angelo, a taxicab driver in the 1920s. However, it's being told in a story form where Tommy is actually sitting down with a detective who's been chasing him and his group for years. The story itself contains 20 different chapters, each one containing a piece of the overall story that will eventually explain how Tommy got to the position of sitting down with the detective. To start off, you begin the story as a complete nobody, not known to anyone in the world, trying to make a living as a cabbie. When everything changes one night when 2 men jump in the cab and hold you at gunpoint and tell you to drive. After this, you begin to get roped into life with Don Salieri, who will become your new boss and who will be the man who looks after you for a majority of the story. Throughout the story, you will continue to dive deeper and deeper into the mob life and see what it is like. You will learn about valuable lessons about loyalty and betrayal within the family. You will also learn how the most trusted man by the Don betrays him, and you're sent to deal with it. You'll also throughout the story be fighting a war with a rival mob, who has been slowly pushing out Salieri. Throughout the 20 chapters, you will be performing jobs and missions that require you to be stealthy and sneak in and steal something for the family, or you'll be tasked with a job that may or may not go south and now you'll have to shoot your way out of the situation. But the game does an extremely good job at building relationships between characters throughout the main story. What I mean by this is even though the game is only 20 missions long, in this game's time frame, these 20 missions happen over years and years, so you can actually see the character development between Tommy and the others grow. You'll be able to watch the 2 who recruited Tommy, which is Sam and Polly, basically become best friends and look out for each other throughout the whole story, watching each other's backs until the very end. You'll be able to watch Tommy grow as a character as he goes on to get married and have a daughter. You can recognize how he goes from looking out just for himself to where his family is his first priority no matter what. Another thing that plays a major role in this game is betrayal. During the story on Mission 10, you are introduced to the first betrayal in the family, which happens to be the Don's right-hand man, Frank. Tommy is sent to deal with Frank as he has developed himself to become one of the Don's most trusted soldiers. At first, with having no experience or knowledge what would happen during this part, little did I know this is going to be foreshadowing for the end of the game. Towards the end of the game, Polly, one of your best friends, asks you to perform a bank job with him, so he can finally escape the family and get out of this life. Of course, being the main character and having plot armor, the 2 of you do it successfully and get out with all of the money. Personally, at the end of the mission, I figured Polly was going to betray me and take all the money and split out of town. But instead you find him with 2 bullets in his temple. Later to find out Sam, your other best friend, spilled it to the Don that Polly and you were responsible for the bank job. You also find out that Sam was the one responsible for killing Polly, and now he was going to try to kill you too. I won't completely ruin the ending, though let's just say it's pretty sad how it finally ends, especially with everything you went through to get protection for you and your family. But for me, the story itself provided me with hours of fun, especially since for this game I was required to play the game twice to receive both of the achievements of beating it. Through both playthroughs, I found myself watching every cutscene and enjoying every interaction with every character, both times. Even though I knew how the story played out after the first time, I couldn't help myself in loving each of the characters that I felt connected to the first time around. The game does a phenomenal job at keeping you sucked into the story and really does a great job at hiding each one of the plot twists that it comes with. It does a great job at building a world that makes you want to keep going back into it. The setting for the game takes place in Lost Heaven, which is a made-up city that is intended to replicate Midwest America. I feel like they did a good job at replicating the feeling of the Depression, where a lot of people out there are working and struggling, while others are doing extremely well, profiting during these times for themselves. The classic car feeling and the new transportation system with the trolley all adds to the vibe and setting of the game. Throughout the game, you also see how the prohibition is faintly talked about and how it affects the world around you. I mean, one of the major ways Salieri makes his money is by running alcohol through the Canadians that he's in bed with. The city itself, especially with the enhanced graphics in the definitive edition, is extremely nice. The look of the buildings and the interior of most places really just makes the game even better. However, the city is broken down into different areas. For example, there's the work quarters, which is a bunch of warehouses and shipments coming in and out, but there's also places like Beach Hill, which represents the higher class area as well as a view into the suburbs of this time. Another big thing that's implemented is the countryside. Although there's not much to it, it really is pristine and a well put together area, and the missions that involve being in the countryside, well, it gives a whole new dynamic. Most of the game is spent driving throughout it, and there's even a free ride mode, in which you can spend a lot of time finding collectibles and different hidden vehicles the city of Lost Heaven has to offer. I mean, there's even a few different achievements that require you to find a certain number of vehicles throughout the game. To actually complete this, you have to visit the different areas and actually explore. Throughout the game, you're introduced to a wide cast of characters, especially ones that are prominent within the family, such as Polly and Sam, as well as meeting a bunch of supporting characters such as Sarah, Frank, and Vinny. With these characters, although being supporting or side characters, they play huge roles when it comes to developing of the main characters, especially when it comes to like Tommy, when he finally settles down with Sarah, and she's able to actually put him on the straight and narrow, and he begins to change and look out more for his family. Don Salieri, when Frank betrays him, you can see how he changes, and how he begins to not trust anyone within the family, and he keeps his circle very close. And even how Vinny becomes a big support for the Don in the last few missions in the game. These characters even become vastly likable, and some of them even lovable. I mean, to be totally honest, I really found myself getting attached to a lot of them. Especially for me, I continued to love Polly and Sam more and more as time went on. The game does a good job at developing the relationship through each mission, but it also takes the time to develop in the time in between each chapter, which can be months or years sometimes. But this attachment really makes the story that much more heartbreaking, and these characters throughout the game just really bring out the best of the game, especially when you come to lose your closest friends towards the end. For a majority of the game, you will be facing off against Don Morello and his family. As the game further explains as time goes on, Morello and Salieri started off in the same crew, and eventually when their boss passed away, they split the city between the two of them. Even though they were friends, it didn't exactly work out, keeping the peace between their crews. Throughout the entire game, they're at each other's throats. Each mission is basically you going up against the Morello crew and trying to set them back and give your own crew the advantage. You come to realize Morello has more money and more police on his payroll. Other than that, there really isn't much more to Morello and his crew. They prove to have a great role in the story and can actually be fairly challenging at some points. Next, I want to talk about the police in this game. And honestly, during my first playthrough, I beat the game on medium difficulty. I really didn't feel like the police made much of a difference. If they were trying to pull me over, okay, fine. I'm just going to drive faster is all. It wasn't until I got to my second playthrough of the game where I really noticed the difference. Going at the story for a second time, I played it on classic difficulty for the goal of trying to achieve the last achievement I needed. Well, within the first 5 missions, I noticed a massive difference in the police AI. And let me tell you, it became way more challenging. Not necessarily in terms of difficulty, but it was a lot more tedious also. If I drove too fast, ran a red light, or even accidentally hit someone on the side of the road, I would get an automatic 2 stars and they would be trying to arrest me. The police AI even seemed to be a lot smarter when it came to chasing you down throughout the city. If you continued to gain stars, the likelihood of there being roadblocks became even more prominent. Even during combat on Classic, the police AI had a lot more accuracy when it came to taking shots. I mean, I definitely had to attempt some missions multiple times, just due to the sheer fact that they could nail me while I was driving away in a car with one shot and I was done. But overall, I think Classic difficulty does the game much more justice. It gives you a much more genuine and enjoyable experience than my playthrough on medium difficulty ever did. I'd like to go more into the combat system and even talk about how the game integrates stealth into it. The combat system itself is fairly fun. I mean, it's nothing spectacular or even game breaking. You point and you shoot. There isn't much variety when it comes to pistols or primary weapons to choose. You have the choice between 3 pistols in either a Thompson, bolt-action rifle, or a shotgun as the primary. So it sometimes could be boring because you have the same guns, but honestly, something about the combat and just having the satisfaction of landing a headshot kept me enjoying it for hours. Although it's a super simple combat system, it was super fun. Even the stealth could be enjoyable. There isn't much to the stealth. You can basically choke an enemy out, but you never have to hide their bodies because no one really actually comes and searches for you. Tommy basically can run while crouching, which makes it super convenient to catch up to enemies while trying to sneak up and choke them. It sometimes felt like the AI when faced with your stealth was really bad. I mean, you could sometimes practically sprint up to them and it wouldn't matter because as long as you click the melee button, you would quietly choke them out. I do wish there was more to it, even if it was just involving forcing the player to clean up after themselves. As an example, maybe having the AI adapt if they find a body on the ground. Like maybe they begin to travel in pairs, or even that they keep their backs against the wall or just become more vigilant. Overall, the combat and stealth in the game is fine. I mean, it was good enough for me to want to continue playing. Lastly, I want to talk about the different collectibles throughout the game. Things like the pulp magazines, comics, cigarette cards, postcards, and even the mystery foxes, which also can relate to the hidden cards. There are a few different achievements involving collecting all of these different items. This can honestly be just a time consumer, and you'll have to go back through some chapters to find the magazines or comics that you missed, especially if you didn't know that you were looking for them. Or a majority of the collectibles will involve you spending a lot of time going into free mode and exploring the city. And honestly, this can be super hard because if you don't have a map pulled up or know where you're going, you're kind of just exploring the entire place until you can find something. And a lot of times they're in places that you wouldn't even expect it to be. In a way, this can be a good thing because it allows you to explore the city and really get familiar with the city of Lost Heaven. So it can make for an okay experience. But if you're just looking for the story, you can honestly just ignore these achievements. The retail price of the game is $39.99 for just the first Mafia remake. However, there is a bundle available for $59.99 for all 3 games. But since I'm only talking about the first game in this video, let's look at it from a $39.99 perspective. Even though this game is a complete remake and you could probably find an older version for cheaper on a previous system, I think it's completely worth your time. To be able to experience the new and improved graphics of Lost Heaven is great, with the game being able to provide about a 15 to 16 hour main story that is almost engaging and riveting the entire time, that'll make you want to experience the game all over again. Plus, having fantastic audio and cutscenes for a game that's almost 20 years old, I gotta say, it makes it an even better experience. So I do believe this game can be worth full price. Now, because it is an older title, you can definitely find it on sale, so definitely keep an eye out. Well, here we are at the end, and personally, I believe this game is well worth your money. Even after putting the game down for a short while, I was already ready to go back for my third playthrough. I think this game can have you just as hooked as it had me, so if you're willing to give it a try, I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Well, thank you for sticking around and getting this far if you did. Please feel free to drop a comment down below if you want to see me play a certain game or review a certain game. Please don't forget to hit the like button if you actually enjoyed. And as always, if you want more content like this, hit the